Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Altaf Malik and today my presentation is web technologies. I am presenting this presentation to Professor Muzammil Mehboob and my class is BASIT session 2018 to 2022. Let's start. www stands for World Wide Web, a repository of information. We gain the information from the website. Okay. Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist, invented the World Wide Web in 1989 while working at CERN. Purpose of this to create multiple resources to handle the purpose of creating a website to handle the multiple resources or the distributed resources. It is a client server services. It provides a server providers. Okay, server providers. Services providers are called web. Benefits of the web is that it is online 7 days a week and 24 hours a day. We can access it at any time and the client can also access it at any time by having an internet or a laptop anywhere in the world. It exchanges the information. It is the least costly cost. Business users use it for advertising their businesses. Competitors use it to compete the another organization if that one don't have the its website. Customer convenience means that it is very easy to understand the client. So client that can also have the customer support online. Also can have the facts. A frequently asked question. It means to say that it saves time and money. Okay, growth opportunity. The business can also grow their by building their website. There is a opportunity to grow their businesses. Okay, let's move to next. In this further we will read about these topics. The first one is Internet Protocol stands for IP. Make the use of IP. IP is the numbers like this 192.168. It means to say that it is closer to the server, web server. It is easy to understand by the web server, but the domain name is easy to understand by the human or server, client server. Clients can understand or a human can understand by the domain name. IP are two types: IPv4 that is consisting of the 32 bits and this is the format of the 32 bits IP. IPv6 consists of the 128 bits and this is the format of the 128 bits IP. IPv6. Internet protocol. There are many protocols web developers should be aware of. For example, HTTP. HTTP stands for the HyperText Transfer Protocol that sends the request of the user to the server to respond it. SSL Secure Shell Protocol allows to the remote command line connection to the server. FTP it is used for the file transferring or the file email or the email transferring. Sorry, file transferring between the computers. POP, IMAP, SMTP. It is used for the email transferring and the storing of the email. DNS. DNS stands for the domain name system that is used to resolve the domain names to IP addresses. As I have described that IP addresses are easy to understand by the web servers and domain names are easy to understand by the human because human can't remember the IP addresses, so he or she can easily remember domain name. Second one is domain name system. Let's describe it further. Domain name system TCP/IP uses difficult to remember as I have described before. Solution: use name instead of IP because human can remember domain name very easily. He used to map a name to an IP address, vice versa, as I have described that IP address have the domain name or mapped by a domain name because it is easy to understand and it is easy to remember by human. The levels of the domain name are four levels. First, server 1 is the fourth level. Let's start from the top level domain tld.com. Second level domain SLD is the domain name that we have mapped to an IP. www structure is the third level domain TLD, and the fourth level domain is server 1 path or metal like HTTP. Protocol. Let's move to a journey of the most general to most specific. Most general top level domain TLD com. Second level domain SLD is the name of your domain. Third level domain www, and the fourth level domain is the protocol like HTTPS. It is not necessary. It can be many or different. Domain name system. The solution of huge amount of information. If you have the huge amount of information, then you can divide your domain into many parts of different computer called DNS server. A host needs some resolution contact nearest DNS. If a client from the US and he wants to access the data from our website, then he will be connected to the US country server because he belongs near to the US server. Okay. If no one server does not know how to translate a particular domain name, it asks another one and so on until the correct IP address is returned. For example, a user requests a web server. It responds the map to the IP addresses and it belongs to the first main route.com. If it doesn't belong to .com or equal to the .com, then it will pass the request to another server. When the another server matches and it didn't match, then it passes to another server and so on till matched. If no one is matched, then the error becomes 404 pay not found for the server problem or maybe any. Domain name system type of top level domain name. Generic top level domain name TLD top level domain name. Okay, third level domain name. Top level domain name. Unrestricted TLDS included .com, .net, .net, .org or .info. These are the domains according on the different organizations. For example, .org is for a non-profit organization. Suppose TLD including .gov, .mil, .edu, .other and others. This can be contains the government website, and if the website is related to educational, then it will start it with the at the end of the edu. Okay, maybe new TLD. Country code top level domain CCTLD. TLD is included .us.ca, and these are the country level domain. It started with the end by adding two characters of the country. Internationalized domain name, also called country code level top level domain, also called the internationalized domain names. Domain name system DNS namespace flat namespace centrally controlled to avoid ambiguity and duplication cannot be used in larger network like the internet. Okay, hierarchy namespace. Hierarchy namespace, each name is made of several parts. It can be video, it can be with system, country level, top level domain, country domain, it can be any. So control names start with the www.java4.edu. It's mean to say that it is educational website domain name. Domain namespace designed to have a hierarchical namespace tree structure maximum 128 level. There can be 128 level maximum, and each level can contain 68 characters that have different names. Uniqueness of the domain name. Level 1 let's look here label. Here have the label arpa.com.edu.org, non-profit organization used for .ad.gb. GW. Let's move to next slide. Distribution of domain name. Domain can be distributed. How? Let's see. It can be two types, unreliable and inefficient. Responding to requests from all over the world places a heavy load on the system. Suppose if you have one server and you have a lot of load on that server, then think what would happen. It will be down. So therefore the main reason to hierarchy occurs. Hierarchy of name server. Let's understand. There is the main server, that is the root server. It have the hierarchy ARPA server, EDU server, education server, EDU server of HDA, and EDU server of BK.edu. Depends upon the data in the site pages. .com server. This is the address with the .com, and this is also addressed with .com. US server, it is the country level, top level server. Let's move to the next. By dividing the namespaces, it can fast the request, so fast the speed of the request and response. DNS zone server. Original server gives a sort of reference to the lower level server. Let's for I wrote a original level is com. That is the zone. Okay, it can it passes a reference to the lower level server like zone and domain is primary server and secondary server. Root server zone is the whole tree. That is the whole tree. Okay, in which the tree is com and in which primary server loads the information about the zone from the disk. It loads the information from the zone. That is the root and that is the com. Uh, okay, next. Secondary server. Secondary server loads information from the primary server and primary server loads information from the root server. And that is the whole tree. Okay, now you have understand I hope. Let's move to the next slide. DNS in the internet. Root. Root have inverse domain, a generic domain and country domain. Generic domain register hosts according to their generic behavior. For sure. Inverse domain used to map an IP to a name. It means to say that if you want to use the IP, it can also be accessed by IP and it can also be accessed by domain. If you want to access it by IP, that is domain, inverse domain. Quantity domain, we want to same format will be used, but just adding the two characters in the last. For example, US, NL, CA for or PK for Pakistan. Let's move to the next slide. Generic domain have the labels com, edu, com used for commercial organization. Edu used for educational institute I have described before. Gov used for government institute. INT used for international organizational. MELA used for military groups. NET used for network support centers. Org used for non-profit organization. Aero used for airlines and aerospace companies. Biz used for business or films, similar to com, as com is a commercial organization. Co-op, cooperative business organization. Info, information service provider. Museum used for museum and other non-profit organization, same as org. Name, personal name, individual. Pro, professional individual organization. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Mapping. Mapping to an IP or vice versa resolving DNS client. When a host needs to map the IP address to a name, it calls the resolver that returns the access and direct domain name server with the mapping. It means to say that when a user request the message to the server by an IP, it finds the IP to the nearest DNS server and it responds to by that server that is near to the user location. A server either responds directly with an info or refers to the resolver to other servers. other servers to provide the info. If the response is not found in the nearest server, then it passes the request to the resolver needs to pass the request to the another server and ask to another server to provide the information that the user have requested. It means to say that to respond the request. Recursive resolution. This is the process called recursive resolution. Let's move to the next slide. Next topic is Uniform Resource Locator. U stands for URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator that contains with the method, host, port, path, and address of web page or other information on the internet. For example, HTTP stands for method, www a host, Yahoo is the domain name, and the port by default port of the server is 80. .com is the uh, .com is the top level TLD, top level domain, and path is the path where your file is located on the server. Okay, method protocol used to describe the document FTP HTTPS. Method means to say that it requests the message to the server and server responds the same answer of that messages back to the request back to the browser, and browser displays it on the screen. Host, a computer where the info is recorded. Host is a server where your information is stored. The IP name or IP address of the computer can be an alias, not necessarily www. There is not important. It is not necessary that it should be contained www. It should be contained another port. I also have described the default port of server is 80. Path. The path name of the file where the info is located in your web server. Let's move to the next slide. In the next slide, we will read more further information about the Uniform Resource Locator, that is URL. Recall that in section 2.1 we have listed the several application layer protocol on the TCP/IP stack, FTP, SSH, HTTP, POP, IMAP, DNS. We have described in the first slide already. Requesting FTP example, a domain name .com ABC text sends out the FTP request to the server on the port 21 byte. Example.com/abc data transmit the HTTP request on the port 80. That is the port 80 is the server web server by default. The domain identifies the server which where the which which we are requesting resources. For example, we are requesting the google.com. The google.com will find in the identifies the domain name by IP from the web services and responds us the our request. Since the domain name can be is the case insensitive, we can use in the small letter like www.google.com in small letters or in big letters. There both can also be accepted. There is no difference because it is insensitive. It is not case sensitive. Alternatively, an IP address can be used for domain. For as I have described before, we can also use the IP instead of the domain name because both are equal. As I have described that IP name are closer to web server and domain name are closer to human understanding. Means we can also access it by IP addresses. We can also access google.com by its IP addresses. Okay, let's move to back. I hope you have understood the IP and the domain name very clearly. Let's move to the next slide. What is port in the Uniform Resource Locator? An optional port has to be used to specify the connection to port other than the default. Okay, add a colon after domain, then specify the integer port, and the port default port of the server is 80. Let's move to next slide. Path. Path is the path of your file where it is located. For example, on many Linux servers, the path is by default bar www.html. On Windows IIS machines, it is often inet put inet pub www root slash file name of your router. The path is optional. However, when requesting a folder or top level page, the web server will decide which file to send you. You can also you can also request the part of the file from the web server by requesting the URL link of that particular part of information that is included on the page or on the website. Okay. Fragments. Browser will say the fragment in the URL. Says out the tag anchor in HTML to scroll the website to it. For example, we have the pages or we have the content in the HTML. We can also access it by its fragment or part of the information. We can also get it by its link. That is URL. For example, we have the URL of google.com where we find the another information. uh, in the top side we find the file, path of the file as same as to the additional computer files path. If you see there, web technologies, the topic number is for HyperText Transfer Protocol, HTTP. HTTPS, HyperText Transfer Protocol. HyperText Transfer Protocol web application layer used to access data World Wide Web. As we know, we can access the data from hypertext transfer protocol, which is used to send the request message to the server, as described in also in the diagram below. Okay, let's move to client server model. Browser request receive displays web object. When the client requests the message to the server responds and receives the result that is displayed on the web browser or the web object. Web server sends object in response to the request, as I have described before. Web server responds and web server client requests by HTTP. As in the diagram, client is requesting a message to the server and server is responding that message to the client. That client will see the result on his her browser. Hypertext transfer protocol, as same as before. Client sends a request to the web server responds that message to the client and client see it on the browser. Request header includes the data about the client machine, and a response header have the information about the server answering the request to the data being sent that has been sent by the web server to the client. That have the information that is the response header. Okay, HTTP protocol message format. Two types of message formats are there, as we have described before: request and response. HTTP request the messages and a web server responds the message back to the uh, user. Get when the client wants to retrieve the document from the server. Head when the user wants some info about a document but not the document itself, as I have described before. Other request types are these: put, post. When we use the Facebook or other social media, we post our information. It means to say that we used to provide the information to the server. We input the information to the server. Put, we provide the new or replacement document to the stored patch. Similar to we get the patched file from the server. We can move a file from one location to another location. Delete, we can remove a document or a photo or a JPG media, anything content from the server. Link, as far as link, unlink, and options are described also. HTTP response message. If the HTTP response message is 200, if web server responds the message 200, it means to say that request succeed. 301 moved permanently object mode. 400 bad request not understood by the server. 404 not found request document not found in the web server. The code status above than 200 codes are for successful responses. The symbol that is the symbol. The code status more than 300 are for redirectional related responses. The code moved before more than 400 codes are client error. The code status more than 500 codes are the server error. If there is an error in the server, it will return the code above than 500. And if there is an error in the client, there is a client error, that will be the code status will be more above than 400. A client error could be a document or a part of the document or the content that is not found in the server or that is wrong. More than the code status is the response code is 200 OK, 301 moved permanently, 304 not modified, 307 temporarily redirected, 400 bad, 401 unauthorized, 404 not found in the web server, 401 414 request URL to load, 50 internal server error. Response HTTP response message is header. Header exchange the information between the client and the server that could be in the form of the date, client's email address, and the document age, address, content length. Header can be consist of three types: general header, request header, entity header uh, of the request message. There is also a general response and entity header of the response message. As described, cache control. Why is cache control and what is cache control? Cache specifies the information about caching. As same as in internet, in the computer motherboard psyche, a user is accessing the same page again and again. The web stores that page in its cache. The reason to do is to enhance the speed. Speed is the speed of the requesting and responding will be more fast as because we are using the cache connection. So whether the connection should be closed or not. Date show the current date uh, of the request message or the response message. MIME is the variant. Show the variant of the MIME. I will specify the preferred connection protocol, communication protocol. Message format request header can accept okay accept encoding accept languages the client can accept the languages client can authorize the permission to the client has the form to show the email address of the user and so on as we know in the web pages. Response says specify the server configuration and special information about the request. Accept range shows if the server accepts the range requested by the client. A shows the age of the document. The public shows the supported list of the method. Retry after specify the date after which the server will be available. It shows the date when the server is available. Server shows the server name and the variant. But which one server is used and what was the variant of the server? It shows the server. Okay. Specify HTTP message format entity header. Entity header can show that allows content encoding same before we have discussed all the headings as same as the previous one. So let's move to the next slide, that is HTTP message and example. The client server sends a message a request and a message to the server and server responds a message to the client that contains the client message contains a request message contains the get method accept images accept pages. Okay, that goes to the server responds the message to the client which can be consist of the HTTP 2200 is for OK succeed. It shows the current date when the message was responded. The server name that is the challenger, the main variant that is this variant 1.0 content length that is 2048 characters, the body of the document, as I have described in the upper diagram. As in as the previous one, it shows the head method and the response of the head method. Assume cache. Why web caching? Assume cache is close to a client. Why? Because he is used to search the specific page a lot of time. Small response time. It small the response time. It increase the decrease the it improves the latency. The response time will be very fast. It will not be late. Decrease traffic to distant servers. Okay. What is the consistency of web caching? How the web caching can be consistent by two methods that are pull and push. What does pull do? Pull caches periodically pull the web server to see if a document is modified. Pull web caches have the specific page and it pulls the web server to see if a document is modified. If the client modify the document, it will send input the server and the web cache wants to know every time has the document modified. Okay, the bus is the push method. The push do whenever a server gives a copy of the web pages. If the web pages, if what does push do? A server gives a least signed expiration time of the web caches that have stored the file. If the web page is modified before the least expiration time, the server notifies to the cache that the page has been modified before the expiration time. Please accept it. It pushes the copy of the page to the web cache. Now you have understand the consistency of web cache, how it can be improved. Topic number 5 is web browser. What are the web browsers and which web browser we can use and how does web browser work? A web server sends the pictures of many types, style sheets, HTML content, and furthermore to a computer side that shows displays in the web server. Web browser displays in the screen in front of the user. Web browser is used to get the fetch the information from the server and display in front of the client. Fetching a web page load time and cascade. As I have described before, this is a method of fetching the page from the server and it is showing in front of the user screen. Interpreting the entire HTML markup together with the images and assets into a grid pixel within the browser window is called rendering the web pages. When the user sees the pages in the browser window instead of the so it represents the um, browser window to the in front of the user. Implement different for each browser. There are a lot of browsers. For example, Firefox is the browser. Chrome is the most popular browser in the world nowadays. Safari is the browser. Explorer is the browser from the Microsoft, and Opera is also the browser which provides the different features. So the all features. Let's discuss the all features of the web browser. Search engine integration. It is the feature of the web browser. URL auto completion. If we put google.com, it will also complete www.google.com. Form auto completion. If we have enter our data in another website, when we are going to put the information into a new website, the form will be also will be automatically complete. Okay. It will complete the form automatically by having the previous one data. Cloud caching for user history and bookmark. If we bookmark the favorite websites, that will be added in our bookmark, and it can also cache the history of our research, our searches. This is a feature of the web browser. If we assign into the web browser after installing the new operating system in our computer, we can also access the previous history and the bookmark links by signing in to our browser. It also detects the phishing sites, secure communication visualization, and much more. It also secures the connection between the data links. For example, we are going to download a file that is attacked with the viruses. It will confirm us that your file is contained with virus. Would you love to download it too or not? Right, yes or no. It is depend upon us whether we want to download the affected file or not. This is a feature of the web browser that allows you and that informs you. Let's move to the next slide. Can what is shown to the end user. Newer challenge for web developer. The challenges for web developers are the extensions like Firebug and Biasilo. For the general public, AdBlock and third-party plugins. For example, some of the browsers provides us the facility to block the ads that occur in our websites. Or you can also install the extension of the plugin, third-party plugins in the web browser. This is also the extension feature. Last one is web servers. Web server is nothing more than a computer then a response to HTTP to HTTP request. A web server is like a computer that responds the request of the HTTP request. Real world web servers are often more powerful than your own desktop computer. For real world web servers are based in the other location are surely more powerful for your own desktop server. For example, if your server have the RAM of 4 GB, then if you have computer the RAM of 4 GB, then you can think the server RAM will be much more in front of your computer. Web servers, you must choose an application to run a website. The application stack will include an operating system. Web server consists of the operating system, web server software, a database, and scripting language for dynamic requests. Application stack of the web server. We will rely on the LAMP software stack. LAMP, which refers to LAMP stands for L stands for Linux operating system. This is the operating system of the Linux. A stands for Apache Web Server. M stands for MySQL database. In previous semester, we submitted a project of a desktop application by using the language of Real Basic C Sharp, Real Programming C Sharp, and the database. Someone used the Oracle database and some students used the MySQL database. This is a database that consists on the web servers. PHP scripting language also a web server consists of the PHP. This stands for PHP scripting languages. Other stacks like LAMP, Software Stack are included WAMP, Wise, and Mean, as same as to LAMP. The operating system of web servers are Linux and Windows. The web server software are Apache, Najik, NG, sorry, Najix, IIS. These are the software of the web server. Web server database software, as I have described MySQL that we have used in our previous project, it is the query structure language of the database. Postgres, SQL, SQLite, Oracle is also the query language that is used on the database. IBM DB2, Microsoft SQL Server, Mongo database that is mostly often used in the Python language. Scripting languages of the web server or the scripting software of the web server. It includes the PHP, it includes the scripting language ASP.NET scripting language Python, also include the scripting language of Node.js that is used for the backend to accessing the data from the database. The topic 7 is summary. We have learned these topics in our recent presentation. These are the topics 2. Thanks for listening me. Thank you so much everyone.